And welcome to another Round the Rotary podcast with me, your host, JP Warren, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. And before we begin, I got to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering and well site supervision, all disciplines of the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate that. You can find Round the Rotary on whatever platform you listen to. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment, leave a review. You can find us on Instagram and all that fun stuff as well. And I'm actually happy about this because I think we tried to get you in here a couple of weeks ago, right? But I think you just had a newborn and all that stuff. For those of you that don't know who I'm talking to, this is Ryan Dawson, the chief Corvanaut over at Corva. One of the founders, actually the founder, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. All right. So, Ryan, thanks for coming in. First off, I'm pumped that you're in here right now because this is the first time that you and I have met, but I've spoken to several mutual friends that we have together, or whether they're customers or not. And Corva is one of those names that has always popped up, and there's always like, it's always mentioned in definitely a great way. Definitely one of the, it's like you're bringing, and obviously we're going to get into this during the podcast, but it's like you're bringing technology that we're using today and like platforms, or whether it's, how you view the data and all that stuff. Like you're bringing today's, I guess, technology that we use in our personal lives to the professional level, to the oil and gas industry. And everyone, the teams that you build, I've heard great things about everything. I'm really getting excited on to discuss how you build teams and kind of what drives you and everything like that. So thanks for coming on today. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Hope we live up to the expectation.
Oh, we will. You know what? And if we don't, those 12 listeners out there, sorry about that. So anyway, Ryan, why don't you just kick this off, man? Well, first off, you just had your second child, as you said, 3 weeks ago. How's that been going?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's there's some changes there. It hasn't been necessarily smooth sailing, but I'm pretty adept at working through chaos and dealing with that. I feel like my entire professional career is like ups and downs. You go from one call that's like bad to one call that's good. I was just reading this other CEO that talked about the same thing. It was like, I would go from someone was leaving the company, then I'd go to a call of making an offer, then I'd go to a call of we had a customer quitting, to a call of trying to close a deal, and it's just like throughout the day, it's just so many ups and downs. And I feel like I also live that life in a sense, just in terms of the chaos, and adding children to the mix is just par for the course.
Do those downs, I mean, so I was at this conversation, I think the other day with someone. It's like, something bad happens to them, or like someone cuts them off in traffic, or someone takes the last parking space, or they have a bad phone call with a customer or a client or something like that. And that sits with them, that sticks with them the rest of the day. How are you when it comes to stuff like that? You just keep on moving on? Do you let it stick with you?
Yeah, I think to be honest, there are things that will eat me away.
Okay.
So I have to pick and choose like what I try to do, but in general, I'm very good at compartmentalizing.
You are.
That being said, there's some famous people like Jeff Bezos that do not believe in multitasking. They say, you can only do, and there's a lot of research to this too, like humans think they're good at it, but in reality, they're just doing all those tasks a little bit poorly. So I'm trying more and more to be very focused on what I'm doing, and then, shift focus to something completely different.
So do you try out, different, you get these successful people, whether it's Jeff Bezos or whoever it is. I mean, do you actually study these people and their success and kind of how they implement things and kind of carry that into your personal life and your professional life?
Yeah, of course. Personally, I think there's many people like that, but me personally, I'm reading books about these people, how they, the word they use are mental models, how they think about life and business, and essentially, it's what is their decision-making framework for all aspects of life.
Okay.
And so, right now it's very popular. People are documenting these different mental models, but one of the simplest one that most people follow is like the 80-20 rule. So the Pareto principle. But you are looking at these people and you're trying to study like, how can I be like that? One of the most famous ones for Elon Musk is first principles thinking. So breaking things down to the very root level and then building back up to how you can answer or solve that question or problem.
What do you mean by that? Can you give me any examples about that? What do you call it? The first principle thinking?
Yeah. SpaceX is the quintessential example. They said, how much is it to build a rocket? And what his calculations did. So there's a famous story. He went to Russia and he tried to buy some Russian rockets, and they gave him this high price. Basically, they didn't want to do business with him. Okay. And so on the plane ride back, he starts calculating on paper on the plane, what is the actual cost components that go into a rocket? So he's like looking at what are, I don't know what it was at the time, but aluminum costs or metal costs. And he's basically saying, actually, the rocket costs this much to manufacture. And so that's sort of the idea of like, why do we do it? Why is a rocket so expensive? That was his original question. I actually think a lot about that in terms of drilling and completions, mostly from the drilling side, is like who out there is breaking down the problem to the very basic level and saying, well cost these days 5 to 10 million. Like, does it really, from a drilling and completion perspective, does it really need to cost that?
Yeah.
I've never done the exercise, but it might be it's outside of my domain. But I wish someone was out there thinking like, who's going to be the SpaceX of drilling and completions and really breaking this down.
So what's interesting about that? I had a Brett Shell. I think I got his last name correct. I think I got and he I think he was first generation oil field. No, I don't think he was first generation, but he has a unique way to view things. Like we've been doing this for generations this way, but why? Can't we just change it up? Like, what if we do it this way? I kind of like those sitting across the table, someone like you or him or something like that, and be the disruptors. Kind of look at whether it's operations or whether it's just the processes in that new light. That innovative, shift the paradigm type of light, which I definitely respect, and I agree. I think more people should have that, but it's just I think it's probably just training your brain to think like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, I appreciate. Let's get this kicked off. Tell me all. Let's get this. We've been talking for a little bit, but I want to hear about you. So, where'd you grow up? I mean, how did you? Where did you see a need for Corva, and how did you kind of start this? And then I want to get into how you build your team, because the people you have over there, to me, I mean, the people in this day and age are definitely reflections of your product and your culture and all that stuff. And it seems like you've built such a good team with such buy-in and such pride in your company, which I think is tremendous. But let's get to that later. But let's start off baby steps first. So give us your background.
All right. So everyone wants to know that I grew up in Midland. That's my connection to the oil field. Third generation, okay. It turns out. Didn't ever think I'd be in the oil field, but my dad was a wildcatter, so I sort of grew up in the ups and downs of Midland, and it was not always pretty necessarily in the 90s. My grandfather helped start some of the original Petrobras stuff. So the whole family, my dad and his family went to live down there in northern Brazil during some period of time. So that was interesting. So it turns out I have a deeper connection than I ever knew. I did go around with my dad sometimes, to these wildcat wells, and you'd grill fajitas at lunch. With these crews down there, and that was pretty interesting. It was fun. I think it was a completely different time. But so I got out of Midland. I went to Austin. Spent 15 years there. That whole part of my life was very different, focused on consumer software. So like I had a company, we worked with Netflix and Microsoft, and I did a lot of like very high, what you'd think of as like the shiny technology that was coming out. And so that was really where I wanted to be for a long while, working on the products that you use at home. I think there's a lot of glamorous things to like when people go work at Apple, they work on a product that everyone uses. And so there's a lot to be said for that. At a point in time, there was so much stuff out there, like how many social media apps did you need, right? And so the thinking for me was I need to work on the hardest thing that I can. And at that point, oil and gas was still in Texas. That was the closest thing to us. So what drove me was this idea like drilling automation is extremely hard. I'm going to go work on that. I think, automating a drilling rig, that sounds really hard.
So you rode with your dad around to a couple locations. You had some fajitas, okay, which is a great time growing up as a kid. It was different. You see this, rig. It's fascinating. You don't know much about it. Then you go to Austin to do this, and then after 15 years, then you're thinking about the drill. So how was that jump for you?
Let me say, I didn't have any. Even though I went to a few rigs to have a fajita cookout, I had no knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Of how oil and gas worked.
I didn't either.
Even to today, I have very siloed knowledge.
Do you think that helps you out?
Yeah, of course. So I have the outsider's perspective for oil and gas. And even to today, you will see that. And if you ask me about various things, you talked about Brett and thinking differently and saying, why does this work the way it does? I'm going to say that, 20, 50 times a day.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think this is a known sort of advantage in terms of like being an entrepreneur and not know what you're doing. The problem is sometimes the people that know what they're doing will not sort of buck the status quo because they know something is problematic, or from my perspective, I don't really know how much of a problem it is. So I might try to do something ambitious, and then that's a good thing.
So you have no problem going in there and throwing up a silly idea or something like that, and just kind of seeing, well, why is it a silly idea?
Yeah, one of the big things that I hark upon a lot at Corva and just talking internally is we can't expect outside reward or results if we're not taking risk.
Okay.
And so I always think like the risk has to match the reward, and what are the risks? And that's a really hard. When you start a business, of course, that's 100% risk. But when you have like a business going and multiple business lines, what is the risk you take that's really going to like bring in like a game-changing technology?
So how do you identify, I guess, the risk versus reward? I mean, is it a spreadsheet, or is it just kind of a discussion with your team on what is that?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think the spreadsheet part is pretty easy. Like if you want to model something that, we can do that pretty easily. Look at the TAM or the market size. More so it's these things that really you look at broader industry terms, not in oil and gas, and you say A plus B equals C, but I don't know B, and I don't know really what C will be. So the idea is, did Facebook ever know how big it would be as a social network? No, like I don't think anyone knew how big it would be. But they had some early ideas around, well, if we're in front of people all day long, and you know the stories, and now it's the backlash is coming, which is, you optimize to like catch their eyeballs all day long. Well,
you're trying to get them to look at that app as long as
exactly.
you can.
And it turns out now they like print money in terms of like advertisement revenue.
Yeah.
So, I think no one knew. No one knew. Otherwise, what you would have seen is VCs investing in so many different social media companies back in the turn of the 2010s. But, now they're just starting to see like how big these things can be. The problem is you look at all these examples that are out there, and none of them are really that applicable to oil and gas.
Okay.
There's this whole other component in terms of this is the way it always worked. This is how the data quality works for the industry. This is how adoption works. This is how sales works. And so you throw on top of that this whole curveball, but you can still take general principles. Early on, I would used to reference it a lot. I'd said, that everyone's going to want an amazing mobile app. That's just a no-brainer. Even till today, I've been saying this for 5 years. Even to today, I open up people's mobile apps for various companies, and they're quite bad. And they must know this because they use mobile apps for all these companies every day on their phone. I mean, who doesn't have a smartphone?
Exactly.
I hope ours is good. It is good. I mean, it could be better. We're always trying to improve it. There were times where I knew the same thing. I would go to our team and say, "Look, this is just not good enough." I think I'm qualified to say that. And so, it's a process. I mean, there's business things that have to happen as well. You have to make money, but at the same time, you want these amazing experiences. So there's other trends out there. One easy one to look at is you go from on-prem software, desktop software to cloud software.
Okay.
That's easy.
Okay.
So anywhere you see desktops or desktop software, that's going to be replaced by cloud software. But those principles are not really big enough to change my life. I mean, I live and breathe that. So the question is, what else? What other trends out there really create opportunities for companies, not just myself, but others to really, to thrive in? And the bet you have to make is usually something 5 years out, maybe even 10 that you can't see. So you have to hope that everything plays out right.
So you're looking at trends, not just in oil and gas, but you're looking at trends in every other industry or every other, I guess, nook and cranny that you can find to see kind of what's moving and shaking over here, what makes sense over here, and maybe is that what you're trying to do and kind of incorporate that stuff into Corva?
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's a hard game, and luckily at this stage, Corva is mature enough where I'm not going to bankrupt the business on a certain idea, but we can definitely take investment dollars and put them into something that's risky.
So let's talk about the entrepreneurial side of you. So did you grow up and you always had that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, I did. I had a grandfather, a different one from the Petrobras, and I would sort of always wake up and he was just always business minded. So when I'd stay with him in the summer, it'd be like, let's read the Financial Times and go over like the best stocks of the day.
Fun, Grandpa.
Yeah. I can't say I do that anymore at all, but fun, Grandpa.
So you've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. So it says the first company, the co-founder was 1323, right? And that was the one in Austin, Texas that you did. So I guess how did you go from, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but when and why did you make the leap from, 1323 when you were living in Austin, Texas, great city, you know what I mean? And then coming to, Houston and starting Corva. So tell me about, that time in your life. I mean, what was going on?
Yeah, I've told this to some people. It was like, a pretty difficult time. I had everything sort of figured out. I felt like I was living on easy street. So I think that was kind of part of the thing is I wanted to go into something new because I was bored of what I was doing.
Okay.
But those leaps, you never can estimate like how hard they are because like you think, oh, I have a model of how things should work. And then you get into it and it doesn't work at all like that. And so I think that's probably like the entrepreneur is like, how many times can you get said no to and keep going? That's really it. But reinventing yourself now, I think if you talk to anyone old, they say I know so much more than I did. I was dumb when I was 30 or whatever, and I feel like that every year. It's like, man, what was I thinking?
If only I knew what it was. If I knew then, what I knew now.
Yeah. Exactly. So there was a lot of hardships. At the same time, it was very romantic in a sense of like, you're in your garage, you're building something from scratch. No one believes in you. There's like there's a lot of books and movies written about this. Yeah.
I mean, you see Walt Disney, you see Apple, you see Amazon. They all start in that one garage, and there's always that picture of the garage right there, or they're at their desk, and there's like clutter, and there's that one big box computer right there, and they're whatever, and now look at them. They're extremely successful, but they did that because they bet on themselves. They wouldn't take no for an answer, and they believed in what they were doing. And I guess if you've always had that, so you jumped in, you went from Austin to Houston. So tell me about, the need that you saw and kind of, what you decided to do and then build Corva.
Yeah. Houston was a natural choice. This is where the people of the oil field lived, and this is where if you wanted to build the talent that required for this company, it had to happen. I know there's stuff that happens in Austin and people do things there, but I felt like, and I look back on the decision and still think that it was, 100% the right decision was to build in Houston. The need essentially was the data, especially we started in drilling. Now we have a very big business in completions as well. The need originally was we have all this data, but no one is really bringing it to all the workers of the oil field in a way that they understand it. So like we need really great visualizations. We need analytics. How do we sift through this data? And so there's many parts of the problem. The thing is you can't just jump in and show people data. It turns out the data is, and it's been well documented, is like very terrible format. And so like we've had to build a business in Corva just to essentially quality control and make sure all the data is in there.
Right.
And that's not a business that I don't think any of our customers buy, but we can't offer the car unless we essentially, do that. But the main output, the thing that people are using are, I have all this information and it's helping me to increase performance. Can I drill faster? Can I reduce time? So like as we're making drilling connections, as we're doing swap overs. So it's a lot of like the time and money, but you're analyzing all these various aspects of the business in Corva to help you make those decisions. So think of it as like operational technology.
Okay.
Operational analytics. So how do I run my operation better, at least from a D&C perspective?
So the cloud based, the data analytics and all stuff. So I guess during I started this podcast probably about a year ago, and I guess during the whole downturn and all that stuff, you heard a lot of different buzzwords. You heard data analytics. That became huge, I feel like, in the past year. At least people started talking about it more. People started showing it more respect and started discussing it more. You hear technology is a huge driver. Obviously, I feel like historically the oil and gas industry is like, oh yeah, we're technology. But at the end of the day, are we? But yes, we are. I mean, you're seeing a huge push right now. So you started Corva in January 2014. In 2015, that's when the downturn happened. Everything, I feel, from my perspective, everything relied heavily on price. People were very hesitant to introduce new stuff. So I guess what are you seeing more, I guess, what is it, fire or motivation or buy-in or people that want to, I guess, discuss the benefits of Corva with you, I guess, during this past year and a half than you have before?
I think in the first downturn, maybe the 2015 one, yes, definitely. I think that really lit a fire. This last year was a really strange year, and also we were a much more mature company. But I think definitely what you're seeing from the top down in some of the biggest companies is we are going to digitize everything. It's proven and known that this is going to improve our bottom line. It's going to improve all of our processes. I think that's one of the hardest things is like when you look at just digital products and say, what is the value? It's always hard to measure. That's like a hard thing for any startup that's working in digital, unless it's like you have a one, some sort of one-to-one conversion there. But the idea is now most people have bought into this because just around the world, they have seen all the industries that have gone this, and like it's pretty well documented that the benefits are very big. So now you have all these from the top of most of these companies, even small companies, saying it's time to digitize.
Yeah.
We're going to the future. And so it becomes an exercise within all these companies to figure out, all right, what are my solutions? What am I doing? One interesting trend is early on when Corva was started, there was a lot of people building internal software. It still happens to today.
Okay.
One of the biggest
internal software in regards to what?
Yeah, potentially what Corva's doing, or the same functions. What people have sort of realized, at least the biggest companies in the world, and it hasn't hit all of the companies, is we're not a software company. We're an oil company. I think there's a lot of question marks coming from just the investment side of the world, ESG. And so they really have to say, are we a software company? Are we going to buy software off the shelf? And so that's been an interesting sort of problem for all startups in oil and gas, is because they compete with internal technology. There's a drive by people that work at certain oil companies to build this internally. And the successes are, it's really hard to say if, how successful that's been. A lot of the projects that I've seen have not been. But at the same time, there is a need for people to...
I got the same thing.
Yeah, there's a need for people to want to customize. That's a deep drive within oil and gas. Actually, for Corva itself, if I can plug it, for the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been working on something called the Developer Center, the Dev Center. And the whole idea with that is people have been asking us for 6 years, can you build this? Can you customize this? How can we do that? And it turns out that Corva itself was built like an app store, like your iPhone, but we never let anyone else into it. And now we're saying, why can't we do that? And so the Dev Center is partners can build apps, rig contractors, frac contractors, startups, and we think it's going to be magical because we're lowering the barrier to entry to do that. So, for example, most people used to spend 95% of their time, and I've seen a lot of these projects on infrastructure, and then only 5% on actually the real hard problem they're trying to solve. And what we're trying to say, this is the pitch, this is the thesis, and I think it will play out is, no, spend 100% of the time on the actual problem, leave the infrastructure to us.
Okay.
And so this is a pretty new concept, not only for oil and gas, but for other industries. But I think what it gives you is the magic of, all right, we can do, operators, all these people can do what they think their IP or their secret sauce, bring their secret sauce to it, but they can build software solutions in maybe a few weeks, maybe it's a month, versus the alternative before, which is you'd have projects going for years and years and they never saw the light of the day.
Are you finding, I guess, the conversations to be more, I guess, open and fluid and transparent when you actually do have these? Because I feel like selling or communicating new technology or people that have done this for generations, or this is the way my daddy did. It's a very hard or it's a very crafted conversation to have them to get buy-in. Are you finding out like there's more buy-in lately, or there's more, I guess, people come to the table that want to, I guess, just are eager to discuss this with Corva, with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there. I've never thought that we've had necessarily the best ideas. How can we empower them? But there was maybe this happened 5 years ago, but everyone had an app idea for your iPhone.
Oh yeah,
you remember that?
Oh yeah.
It would be funny if maybe there was a sort of phase there where everyone had an app idea for drilling, completions, production, you name it.
Well, that's all the show Silicon Valley started. They had that app idea. Yeah, that was 5 years ago when that show started. Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm. I remember that completely. But
I feel like we can, if we can succeed and empower people to sort of build some of this stuff in a few weeks, I think that's a win for us. It's hard to say. It's hard for people to see it, even myself. But really, the oil and gas industry has the ability to go so much further. But the data has never been connected in a way where people can really experiment and think what could be possible. And this might sound far-fetched, but the idea is there are data-driven models out there. Well, just for example, I mean, do you really know what's going on downhole while you're drilling? Have you been down there? No.
No.
Right? So, they understand drilling very well, but in a sense, it's like there's so much more that they don't know. I was just talking to someone about a hole cleaning model or like software that can do that. And it's very, very complex, as you might have guessed. Like, what are all the factors that go into this? And that's why you've never seen it really commercially successful. But let's fast forward and say I have all the inputs from all these different apps or analytics things coming together, and I have data that I can trust. There, you can bring that much further and further. And so I think what we're going to see is so much more efficiency and ability, just because we're finally getting to that point. Now, so Corva's filling a real big need, which is essentially like we need a plateau that has all, we need to stand on the shoulders of giants in terms of like all this data needs to be right, and we need these calculations to be there. So there's this thought that there's so much further that can go, and hopefully we're unlocking the door. It will be really interesting in a few years what happens. So I've been talking to just people recently that think very differently about reservoirs, about how you drill, about, geosteering. Is that really the future, or is like, using rock mechanics, the a different way. I mean, there's really crazy ideas out there that basically, and the only way you can really do them are through data-driven analytics.
So it sounds so interesting to kind of be at one of these tables when you're sitting there talking to, whether it's the reservoir engineer, or production engineer, or whether. Where do you find, I guess, these innovative people that you want to surround yourself with, where you do get these ideas from? I mean, it's just through your networks, or do you notice someone on LinkedIn, you're like, this person thinks kind of different. I like how this person thinks. I want to pick their brain a little bit. I mean, where do you find, I guess, your source of product or drive or inspiration when it comes to, I guess, what you're trying to put together?
To be honest, I'm trying to temper some of the ideas that I have in my head, because I need to focus more on the execution. I need to make sure the stuff becomes real. So I'm trying to pull down, I'm in the clouds too much, really. And I need to be more focused on how, what are the steps to make this a reality? Because if this doesn't succeed, how do we get to the next thing? I do meet a bunch of interesting people. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there. It's just also, hey, we only have certain resources for building things or entertaining so many ideas. So, in my mind, the oil and gas industry has so much low-hanging fruit in it to be able to be uncovered right now that it's, you go on these webinars and it's automation. I would argue that, I'm not seeing that great of solutions for this low-hanging fruit. How can we be at automation? And so that's probably not a popular opinion, because everyone wants to hear about automation.
Everyone wants to hear that right now, yeah.
Yeah, so our marketing department is probably talking about automation, but the reality is like me just looking at it like Elon Musk and the rocket, and or doing first principles. You're saying, we're missing a few pieces.
You had an interesting, I'm trying to look for the post, actually. I mean, we're talking about the future of oil and gas right now, and I would love to hear kind of your quick intake on, number one, where you see it going, number two, where you want it to go. Because you had something up here, you said, something in 5 years. Well, Corv wasn't around 5 years ago, so who knows what's going to happen by then. I can't find it right now. That's how it works around the Rotary. Whenever I want to show you something, I can't find it. But anyway, that's how it works in life. But I guess where do you see the industry going, and I guess where do you want it to go, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. So the industry of the future, I think, is an interesting one. I have heard that private equity companies in Houston, I think John Arnold just made a post about this on Twitter, but he talked about no PE firms can get money for essentially oil and gas projects, but if this is green, they can get money all day long, right? So there's this really interesting problem in terms of where the money is not necessarily meeting oil and gas. In terms of like projections, I definitely see for the next 20 years, there's flat demand. But, that being said, these black swans are really hard to predict. But I think there's enough of a lifespan of pretty decent like extraction and, upstream activity that it's worth definitely thinking through. I always think that people always want the future to come faster, and so like even people that are out there looking for green technology to replace oil and gas, I think it actually happens much slower than people would like.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I don't drive to work on any route that has a supercharging station next to me. So, that's just an example of like we're probably going to need a lot of those before even EVs.
Before we flip that switch.
Yeah, taking over. So the most interesting thing is like there is the ability to automate things from a software perspective in terms of what people work on. I think they talk about software eating the world, eating every industry in terms, and what that means is it does more and more functions. And I think there's a big runway to replace a lot of those things. So one of the things that we work on a lot is well design, which is, so drilling engineers spend about 50% of their time doing well design. Well, with the data in Corva, we think we can get that down to at least 5 minutes, meaning it automates all of the processes of building out the well.
Wow.
And we think the 5 minutes is really the tweaking time. We think the human brain is great for understanding something. So let's say there's 5 minutes of I want to change this, and this, but at the output is is a document you can drill off of, you can, circulate to everyone.
God, that's mind blowing.
So, that's an example of, okay, then what do we do with the rest of the 50% we just saved for drilling engineers? They could focus on live operation performance. This is, same thing goes for completion engineers. And what happens there will increase the, the performance or efficiency. Long term, you can definitely see that there's going to be much more technology driven.
Right.
This is going to change the game in terms of like what people do, what they work on. That being said, we have to come to some mixture with the whole ESG movement too. So what I see are a lot of attempts at emissions tracking, but not that great. So I think a large component of oil and gas has to be, these companies have to be the best in the world at emissions tracking and do that really well.
Tracking and reporting, right?
Yeah, so that is going to be very, forefront. But the question is, you can't just build that in a vacuum. You have to work with what oil and gas is. And so, like right now, there's a lot of like these methane seeking drones out there.
Yep.
That must be pretty expensive to deploy. So what are the cheaper options? Because it doesn't matter if you say this is a great idea, it still has to be economical.
Right.
So I think, in the future, the best companies of the world are going to be the best at efficiency in terms of automation and emissions tracking. So from a high level.
So I want to kind of flip this up because I know that you're kind of pressed for time, but I kind of want to talk about the team and the culture that you've built, because that just echoes through every conversation I've had about Corva. Your team, there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of buy-in, there's loyalty, there's just kind of, I feel like there's honor being a Corvanaut. So can you just talk to me on kind of, I guess, what you look for and how you build your teams, and I guess how you instill that sense of pride with your group right there? Because that, to me, that would, I mean, obviously all the 98% of the stuff that you do sounds way over my head, but that to me sounds like an extremely challenging part because you're dealing with people at this point. Mm-hmm. So how do you, I mean, what's your secret to success when it comes to finding the right people and instilling that ownership or empowerment or pride?
Yeah, you originally said it correctly, which is that the ultimate product at Corva is none of the software, it's the people, it's the culture.
Right.
So really what I'm building, my job as the CEO of Corva is to make sure the culture and the processes are right. And that's ultimately going to be the engine that drives everything. How sales works, what are the future products we build, how does our customer support work? And so that is my biggest focus of every day, is making sure that's right. And I think early on, I interviewed pretty much everyone at Corva. That was I had my stamp of approval on it. We just made sure we were hiring the best of the best.
But what is the best of the best? Is it the best, I guess, programmers, or is it the best way that people kind of look at this? Like, oh, why are we doing it this way? What is it? What are you attracted to when it comes to someone that comes to you that wants to be part of the team?
What you really want to look at is what is their rate of change in terms of how they grow as a person. So I don't care if they come in knowing very little. I don't care if they know petroleum or software. What you want to measure, and this is hard, is in what period of time do they grow? So let's say I hire someone and then a year later they're really not that much of a different person.
Staying the same, yeah.
That was not a great hire. Let's say I have someone else and they've sort of learned and reinvented themselves through that 1 year. Okay, that's exactly what you're looking for, because the problems are always changing. What you got to do, what you're working on. And so you want people that are really dynamically changing. I'd say that was probably the hard thing about last year for most companies. It was like the change wasn't there. The first thing everyone, when they join Corva, we tell them, you don't understand how fast this company moves. And they're like, oh, yeah, I get it. I mean, I was told that in my last company.
Everyone in Corva was.
And then, I don't know if you've ever talked to anyone that worked at Corva. They would say, geez, I completely underestimated the pace of change just at this company. And, we're a small company, and we got to fight against the biggest companies in the world that have 30,000 employees, and we're just, north of 100. So how do you do that? You just got to outwork them. You got to be smarter. but it's more about empowering people to do jobs that they would never really have. I mean, if you work at a big company, you're going to be responsible for did I get the right nut or bolt correct? And that's my one job. Do I have the right nut? At Corva, we're going to put you in charge of, very big things and projects, and it doesn't always go well,
right.
But did you learn? Did you succeed in learning something and figuring out what you did wrong? And can you apply that correctly the next time?
So it's pretty much you're trying to find these people and try to identify some spark or drive in that, and then after a period of time, then you decide if this is the right person for the culture, for the team.
Yeah, these days we rely a lot on 30, 60, 90-day goals. And so what we really want to do is get you into the seat and get you doing what you do and evaluate you there.
Okay.
It's not always possible because if you have to leave another job, but really I think the evaluation needs to happen there. We've tried to devise different tests, different methods to do different things, but the best way is let me see how you work. I work with you. For developers, that's kind of becoming more of a common thing. Is let's just work together on a little project. At Corva, we're trying to devise different projects that we can roll out so we can see, how we work with them. I think that's the easiest way just to see does this work? Is it a mesh? Did you deliver on what you said you would do? So that's one of my big things is just, on job performance.
Yeah. Okay.
I think people can ace interviews. People also can do poorly at interviews.
Their resume might look great, and at the end of the day, it really doesn't speak to kind of their skills or their talent.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually getting the person in the seat and seeing how they collab with the people there. But honestly, we got to wrap this up right now because I know you're expecting a call. But first off, I wish we'd extend this. I'd love to have you back on again sometime. I mean, again, everyone, this is Ryan Dawson, the Chief Corvanaut, the CEO, the founder of Corva, and I highly recommend you checking out their homepage. It's over at corva.ai, and it's some really, really cool shit. It's the graphics are great. I love this stuff right now. I love what I'm looking at. And I would love to, I've heard about y'all's office. I mean, I think once things are safe, I'd love to come check that out, just see
it's safe.
And meet the crew over there. But I love what you're doing. You came recommended by several people to get on the show, and I just wish we had a little bit more time. Maybe we'll get you back again, have a little more time, talk about something else. But again, everyone, do you have anything else for the listeners out there, any plugs or anything like that, or be on the lookout for this or anything? No? All right. Well, Ryan, thank you so much, and I wish you the best. I wish you and the rest of the Corvanauts success, and hopefully, things go well for y'all. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next step, what y'all come out with, and what y'all produce for the industry, and maybe outside the industry. Who knows?
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.